Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm going to do a video on how to make garlic scapes. I did one before, but I wasn't happy with the way the video made. I made one last year, so I'm going to redo it. This one is going to be a tighter, cleaner, faster, shorter, more to the point video. So, garlic scapes, they grow out of garlic at a certain time of the year. I just did a video on garlic scapes. I'll put a link to it at the end. You got a garlic, it's got a bulb on the ground, but it also puts out this flower-like thing, a bulb. It's not exactly a flower. And you can harvest that basically when it's taken one twist, and you can eat it. And you can use it in your cooking. You can use it in a stir fry. You can even use it in a salad. It's milder than garlic, but it's definitely garlic. But if you're like me and you have a lot of garlic, you have to find some way to store it, preserve it, or you just can't keep up with it. I'm basically, in a span of about a week, I'm going to get a bowl like this. In a span of about a week or two, I'm going to get maybe 4 bowls like this full of it. It's just too much to keep up with in your cooking, and it doesn't keep indefinitely in the fridge. So what I like to do is make a kind of pesto out of it. I mean, I'm using that term very loosely. It's basically just the scapes with some salt and some acid and some herbs to use as an addition to dishes, or sometimes I'll just cook pasta and just throw a couple tablespoons, toss it around. That's a perfect side dish. There's, any recipe I give on my channel here, adjust it the way you want. You don't have to do it, well, I'm putting sage in this as well. I don't like sage. Well, don't use sage, all right? So let's get started here. I've got the garlic scapes. They're a bit difficult to process and chop up. So what I do is I put them in a bowl. I just start cutting them with scissors. And you want to have something pretty substantial. You don't want to have wimpy scissors. You might even break them. So, a heavy thing like this, or ideally this kind of, kitchen scissors. These ones come apart. You can put them in the dishwasher. They're very strong. You can cut a chicken in half with these things along the backbone. So they're handy for stuff like this. You can hold them, they have nice big holes. If you've got big man hands like me, I can, really get in there and work it, right? Anyway, you're just doing that so that it can be a manageable size to put in your food processor. The ingredients. You need about this much garlic scapes. I don't know how much that is. It's the amount that a 4x10 garden puts out. But I don't know, maybe it's a pound or something like that. I mean, it's hard to measure the volume because it depends on how small. The smaller you cut the garlic, the less the volume is. But yeah, maybe that's a pound of garlic. And for the amount of garlic, got about this much herb. And you can use whatever herbs you like. This is basically oregano and sage. Sometimes I put savory in. I find savory a bit of a pain to get the leaves off the stem. For the sage, you've got the sage, and you just you don't want the stem, so you just nip off the leaves like that. For the oregano, you just hold it near the top, pull it down, and the very tip of the oregano is kind of soft, so you can just snap that piece off and throw that in. This oregano is just about to flower, so it kind of works out well. When the garlic scapes need to be harvested, there's a time you have to harvest them if you want to get good sized garlic, and the best out of them as well. The best out of the garlic scapes, also the biggest garlic bulbs. When that happens, it tends to be around almost exactly the same time that my oregano is just about to flower. So if I harvest all my oregano around now, cut it all off, it'll send up new oregano that I can dry around the end of August. So, this is a really good way to preserve my oregano. I tend to use oregano when I'm cooking things that go with garlic. So it just makes sense for me to put those two things together. You don't have to add oregano to this recipe if you just want to preserve your garlic and have, basically the garlic flavor, garlic scape, pesto. You can do that too. That's all a question of your taste, right? So, or if also the type of cooking you do. So you got your garlic scapes, you got your herbs, and we need about 2 tablespoons of salt, teaspoon of pepper, optional. You need a lemon. Also need some vinegar. For this recipe, for this amount, I'd say you need either 2 lemons or a lemon and half a cup of vinegar. You just need some acid to just to improve the shelf life of it. I mean, I'm gonna put this all in jars and I put it in the freezer and I take it out when I need it. But once it's thawed, it's gonna sit in the fridge, and you know, you could be confident it'll keep for a week in the fridge, but you go another week or another week or another week, eventually things are getting a bit risky. But if you add some acid and you add some salt, right, you just buy yourself that much more time. I'm not gonna say how much time because I don't know. I know it's 100% safe for a week, and beyond that, it's up to you and your personality for risk taking. Yeah, I've only got one lemon today, so that's what I'm going to use. Ideally, I just prefer, you know, in something like this, I prefer the taste of lemon to the taste of vinegar. But anyway, use that. So it's pretty easy to do. I mean, you gotta juice up your lemon, and you gotta get the seeds out of there. Perhaps I should have done this before filming, but whatever. There's lots of different ways to get, you know, seeds out of lemon juice. This is probably the least efficient way to do it, but it does work. You can run it through your fingers. You can, you know, do different things, but I tend to end up doing it this way a lot. I mean, you can run it through. I can just pour this through a sieve of some kind, but then you lose the pulp, and you know, if you don't want the pulp, then that's the fastest way to do it. But to me, that's like, the pulp is lemon flavor that I paid for. It all comes back to the frugality, right? So I want that pulp. Anyway, so I got that. All right, let's move that aside a little bit. Let's get that off of there. All right, so we got our food processor. This is a good heavy one. And I'm gonna put our lemon in. We're gonna put, I'm just gonna eyeball this, but half a cup of vinegar. Again, just use another lemon if you don't want to do that, and use whatever type of vinegar you want. You can use cider vinegar or red wine vinegar or balls, you know, whatever you think is going to taste good. For things like this, I don't want it to taste like anything in particular, so I use the white just because it doesn't really have a unique flavor of its own. Okay. Teaspoon of pepper, optional. Doesn't really do anything to preserve it. And 2 tablespoons, yeah, these aren't measuring spoons, but close enough. 2 tablespoons of salt, like that. And now we need the oil. You can use olive oil for this. You can, you know, use whatever type of oil you think is good oil. I'm just using everyday cheapo vegetable oil. Okay, and some water. Same amount, cup of water. Cup of oil, cup of water. I'll put the ingredients in the show notes below, or the description box below the video if you want to know them. Just you know, click on the description box, you see all those details in there. Now the reason you need to add that much liquid is because otherwise it gets too dry in here. It just won't mix up. So it's you know, just part of that process. For me, I like to be gradual. I put in a bit of this and a bit of that and just keep adding to it. So I got some of the scapes here. Some of the herbs, like that. This is all going in here eventually. It's all going to get broken down. Where's my top? All right, so let's give that a shot. It's broken down a bit. Add some more of that. good to use the pulse setting. This is all you got to do. This is the process. You're just going to keep doing this until it has the appearance of guacamole, really. Put the rest of those herbs in. I might have a bit too much scape here, so we'll just see how it goes. You can help things out a little bit by just pushing things down. Like that. So once you get it sort of broken down and it's turning over, you want to let it run for maybe like a count of 10, like this. See how liquid it is, and if it's like for me, I'll show you. This is okay. You want it liquid enough that when you pack it in your jars, it's not going to have air pockets, right? So you want it to have a degree of liquidness. So, you know, and really it depends. Like, you know, I said to use a cup of water and use a cup of oil and that sort of thing, but the water is the thing you can adjust up or down because you really don't know what the water content inside the garlic scapes is, right? I picked these garlic scapes yesterday afternoon. They've been sitting on the counter for, you know, almost 24 hours. So they may have lost a little bit of water, so probably wouldn't hurt to add an extra half cup. So yeah, you want it to have like, so this is getting to have that sort of buttery sort of texture, to me, just give you a look at that. It looks still a bit dry. Now another trick you can use is to just let it sit on the counter after you've turned it a little bit like this and let the salt go to work on everything, and it'll just kind of limp everything up. So you can do that, but I'm making a video here and I haven't got time for that. So, you know, so that's another thing I could do is just whiz it all up real good and just let it sit for an hour and then come back to it. And that will, you know, help, you know, the acid and the salt and all that stuff will sort of change the composition of the ingredients, and you can probably, you know, it's almost like it'll make water out of it. It'll pull the water out of the greenery and solve it that way anyway. If you're impatient and you don't have time for all that, also if you got more garlic scapes to use up, you can add a little bit more water. I'm going to do that. Now I'm just putting in an extra third of a cup, that's it. So I mean there's an aspect of this recipe that requires a bit of judgment and just making decisions like that. So for me this has taken about all the scapes it can take. And these are the scapes from about 2 garden beds. Although one of them was a bit small, but it's still too much, I think. All right, so that's looking right to me. So I'm just going to let this run for about 30 seconds. so that I know that it's all broken up and everything's basically, it's turning over, right? You don't want to have, if the stuff, I mean, most people that do a lot of this sort of work know this. I'm explaining this for the novice, so don't be offended if you know this already, but you've got a pulse setting and a just full on setting on your food processor. And you know, if the stuff isn't moving around in the food processor and you just have it on full, it's just going to burn itself out. So you use the pulse setting until the material that's in the food processor is behaving like a fluid and it's turning around like that, which is where I'm at now. So now that I've got to that, I don't have to pulse it anymore. I can just turn it on and let it go. And I'm going to let it go for about 30 seconds. That's the way I want it. I'm just going to push the little bit of stuff pushed up on the sides here. Just going to push that down. It's not quite as fine as the stuff that's in the main mix. Give it another count of 5. All right, we're done. That's it. Our pesto is basically here. Our pesto, pesto has arrived. So now all that's left to do is to jar it up. For me, jarring, I like to use, I've got different size jars. I've got these kind of handy plastic ones. Again, you're not canning this. I mean, maybe there's some way to heat this up and to can it and pressurize it and make a vacuum and sterilize it and all that sort of stuff. But I'm all about flavor, and I think you just get better flavor if you leave it fresh like this. I prefer everything fresh. If I can't have it fresh, I like to freeze it and then thaw, and it's still closer to fresh than if you heat it, right? Once you heat some sort of thing like a vibrant thing like this, just something's lost and the flavor just changes fundamentally. And if I had no other choice, I would, but I've got the room in my freezer, so I do it. Now, I like to use a number of different sizes of jars because you never know what you're going to need it for. This little size here, this is 125 mil, half a cup. It's sort of ideal because that's kind of like a week's worth. If you use a lot of garlic, like 2 tablespoons at a time, like I do, going up a size, so the 1 cup, right, 250 milliliter container is sort of ideal because basically you're going to take it out of the freezer and it's going to be in your fridge for about a week and you're going to use it up. I always like to do 1 big jar, like this is what is it, half liter, right? 500 milliliter, or 2 cups, right? I'm using rough measurements here, but I like to have, when I do a batch, I do 1 big one, because if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of cooking using that sort of thing, or if we're going to have guests or whatever, I like to have 1 big one that I can just take out. And it's also just a quicker way to jar this all up. You're not frigging around with these little tiny things, right? So, if you haven't got one of these thingies, get one because it's just a real godsend in the kitchen. Everything should be clean and sterile and all that sort of stuff, right? And remember, I'm not a trained institutional cook. I'm not a trained chef, so don't take your food safety advice from me. Do your own reading, do your own research, and do what you think is best, right? I'm just showing you the general process, how I do stuff. I'm not teaching you how to avoid ever being sick for the rest of your life. That's not what my channel's about. It's an entertainment channel for the most part, right? Okay, so that's about right. Give that a couple bangs to get some of the air out. Now, it's not as important to get the air out for this sort of thing because we're not storing it at room temperature. It's going in a freezer. But you just want to make sure that you are using the space in the jar to the best of your ability. So I've got this filled up to the right to the neck, basically, right? So it's got room to expand in the freezer if it, there's some water in there, so it will expand a little bit. So it's got a little bit of room for that to happen. But I don't know why it works out, but with this much organic material and the salt and the oil and all this sort of stuff, the jars, at least in my experience so far, haven't broken, haven't cracked, and you don't want that sort of thing, right? So this seems to work out. It seems to be. I got the idea for doing this because I noticed my freezer jam never seems to crack. So I thought maybe it would work. So I did a little tiny batch once, and I never had a jar break on me in the freezer. So right, so there's that one done. And now I'll just do the rest. So that's a general idea. Garlic-scape pesto. If you've got more garlic-scapes and you know what to do with and you can't seem to give them away to your friends and neighbors and so on and so forth, and if you want to make the most out of the food your garden's giving you, this is a great way to put some of that aside for later. And it's a great ingredient to add to different recipes. And again, you don't need to have the herbs in it if you don't want to. You can just have it pure garlic-scape. That's a more versatile, you know, just garlic-scape, salt and lemon and oil and the water. That's a more versatile thing to preserve because you can use it in more different culinary styles. And I always make a couple batches like that too. I've done 2 batches already this year using the herbs. Probably the next 2 batches I'm going to do just the garlic-scapes to have that version of it. All right. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Don't forget to click the bell. Until next time, get out there, get at it. Have fun in your garden. Have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.